All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is the NBA Tournament Strategy Show where we look at last night's slate, we look at today's slate, brainstorm a little bit, talk about guys we like, guys we might not like as much. And then on the pre-lock show, which is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for VIP members only, we talk about leverage plays, core plays, how we're using the domination station that night, and go from there. So yeah, guys, appreciate you all for tuning in. Let's go ahead and look at last night's slate. It was a pretty good one, pretty profitable across the board. This was the $100,000 winning lineup from last night. It was like a four-way split, so I think it was like $35,000. And I think you see here that part of the reason why there was that split was because there weren't really any low-owned guys that you needed to kind of hit this line. So starting off, we have Emmanuel Quickly. He was an obvious core play once we got the news that Brunson was going to be out. Cole Anthony just kind of made things work. He didn't really have a great game or anything like that, but he was good enough. I didn't have a lot of Cole Anthony, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. Quentin Grimes, we had a lot of them. I don't recall if he was a core play. Yeah, Quentin Grimes was a core play, so glad that one panned out. Evan Mobley, we had him in on, and then we took it off, I believe, when we were trying to make things work. So that's unfortunate, but still a solid spot for him. Made sense. Mitchell Robinson we had a lot of Mitchell Robinson. We were over the field. I don't recall if he was a leverage play or a core play though, but we had a good bit of him. Darius Garland, we had a lot of. Wasn't a core play. He wasn't even really that great, if we're being honest, but he made a lot of things work. Brandon Ingram was the sneaky one here. He was a leverage play for us last night. We were well over the field on him. So I think the main reasons why I had a pretty good night were because of Grimes and Ingram. And then Joe Val, we forced exposure to, but he wasn't a leverage play. We couldn't get so far over the field. But we know, like bigs against the Hornets, we do this all the time. It wasn't really much of a surprise there. So solid night. Forgot. I can't say your full Discord name, man, because I think we'll probably get demonetized. But Coach, great job last night. Nice job winning $1,200. Look forward to hopefully having more wins tonight. I know quite a few people had some solid wins, so good job, guys. Killer Cam said last night didn't really work out for me, but today's a new day, though. Exactly. I love that mindset, man. Sorry it didn't work out last night, though, but hopefully we'll get back on track today. This is a pretty large slate. We have 10 games, and honestly, there's quite a few interesting spots that we can dig into here. I already know some sneaky plays that I'm hoping are low owned, but towards the end of the season, people are much sharper than they are at the start of the season. So first things first, we have the Indiana Pacers. The only thing that really matters here for me tonight is, will Tyrese Halliburton play? Tyrese Halliburton is currently questionable. If he plays, I don't plan on having a lot of exposure to this team. I'm okay. I like Miles Turner. You guys know I've been playing him all year. The matchup against the Celtics isn't my favorite, but he's one of those bigs who are on my radar really no matter what, like whether Halliburton plays or not. But I'm not going to put my stamp of approval on him yet. We just kind of have to see how news breaks out for some of the other bigs on this slate, but he's viable. But if Halliburton plays, I'm not going to force exposure to anyone else. If he's out, then we do what we usually do. You see a boost to McConnell, Nimbard, and then Turner sees a small boost in usage as well. You can take some shots of some of the other guys in these situations, but I think most of them are priced pretty appropriately at this point. A lot of games, guys. Got to move quickly. Got to move fast. For the Celtics, they kind of don't stand out on this slate very much. I don't expect them to have a lot of ownership, but they are healthy. Peyton Pritchard's doubtful. Gallinari's been out for a long time, so nothing really matters too much here. Robert Williams hasn't been starting since he came back from his last injury, so don't really expect him to see a ton of run here. This is a great matchup. We've been playing bigs against the Pacers for a while now, so we know it's a solid matchup. I am only going to consider Robert Williams if he ends up starting here, but I'm not expecting that. But if he does, then he becomes much more viable for me on this slate. You can also make an argument for Al Horford, but I just don't go there very often these days, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Spurs. The Spurs always find a way to make themselves stay relevant. We never, no one ever talks about the Spurs unless you're playing daily fantasy sports because they always have some random variation of guys playing that night. So for us, we have Keldon Johnson listed as probable, Zach Collins listed as questionable. We know how big of a deal Zach Collins potentially being out is. He's a high usage guy at this point. When he's not available, we start playing guys like Sandro, and usage also increases across the board for the starting lineup. So that's big. Devin Vassell is currently listed as questionable. He also has a really big impact. Keita Bates-Diop should start in a spot like that if he ends up being out. And like I said, Devin Vassell's a relatively high usage guy, so that usage makes the other starters more viable. So we have to keep an eye out for that. Jeremy Sachan's out. Whenever Jeremy Sachan's out, that's automatically a nice boost for Keldon Johnson as well. So as long as Keldon Johnson remains probable and actually plays, he's looking pretty good tonight for me. We also have Trey Jones listed as probable. Devontae Graham is listed as probable. Doug McDermott is probable. Romeo Langford is out. You guys know I care about when Romeo Langford is out because I am never going to play Keita Bates-Diop again if Romeo Langford is playing. But when Romeo Langford is out, I'm much more comfortable playing Keita Bates-Diop. Weird correlation. It's just something that's been working out for me, so don't question it too much. Darius J said the Hornets pulled some bull last night. No, everyone got hurt. Everyone got hurt. It was kind of wild. It was kind of wild. I think there was a moment. I wasn't watching the whole game, but I saw a clip on Twitter where it said there was no players available on their bench at some point. Wild. Tonight should be wild too. So that makes it more fun, hopefully, for guys like us. Thomas Dye, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Hope you did well last night. Darius J said, need those likes, guys. It helps the channel. Yeah, if you all could like and subscribe, it really does help this show in particular to let us know that people are still checking it out. And also, if you could subscribe and help the channel grow, we have a lot of really good videos on the channel about prop betting, underdog stuff, and that whole world too. So definitely appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Darius. So yeah, we're gonna have to play the Spurs potentially tonight. Keldon Johnson is a guy that I'm definitely going to have exposure to. I just want to see what his ownership is. Ideally, it's relatively low, so I can get some decent exposure to him and not have to feel like I can get some decent leverage to him and not be too crazy there. And Sandro as well if Zach Collins is out, and then Keita Bates-Diop. Those are kind of my main three guys right now. We're only 2 games in and already finding some interesting plays. The Wizards are next. Bradley Beal is out. Kyle Kuzma is out. Kristaps Porzingis hurt everyone's feelings last time out. And hopefully that means that people are going to be a little bit more hesitant to go back to him. I have no hesitation. Absolutely zero. If he's around 15% ownership, he will be a leverage play for me tonight or lower. If he's higher, then I'll just want to make sure that I'm slightly above the field on him. He has a fantastic matchup against the Spurs. He has a crap ton of increasing usage when Beal and Kuzma are out. The only thing we're missing is low ownership. I don't think we'll get that low ownership, but I would love it if we do get that. Denny Avdija, huge boost in this spot. Should start in this spot. A lot of good things going on for him. We've seen Monty Morris perform strong in this spot. Even Wright has had a little bit more activity as well here too. So for me, it's Porzingis, Avdija, Morris, or the main guys I'm considering here. Morris, we're just gonna have to compare to the other value options that we might get later on this slate. So gotta compare it, and it's gonna have to just kind of balance it out and make sure that we're making the smartest choices available. But he's definitely a viable option for me on this slate. Kispert could be a little sneaky. He has to be very efficient with his shooting, which he typically is not. So I think we'll have better options available on this slate, but a viable, realistic option if you're looking for a low-owned, potentially high upside play tonight. Anyone else? Gafford? Gafford's fine. I don't really like playing Gafford very often. But if this game does, yeah, honestly, I can't really think of a great reason to play Gafford. He does project well. He's just cheap, and he does have some upside. I'm not gonna fade him, but I don't want to be over the field on him tonight, to be honest. Prefer Porzingis, Avdija, and Morris. All right, this game, there's quite a few wide spreads on this slate, so that's a little worrisome. But we're just gonna have to live with that. For the Pistons, they have quite a few guys out still. They have Burks out, Rodney McGruder's out, Isaiah Stewart's been out for a while now. Bogdanovich has been out for a while now. Diallo, Cade Cunningham, all of those guys. So we've seen Marvin Bagley have some ceiling performances here lately. We've seen James Wiseman have some strong performances here. But the Raptors are a team that I don't like to pick on very often. And I feel like everyone's priced pretty appropriately these days. We're no longer getting these guys in like the 4 or 5K range where they were more so value plays. So as of right now, the Pistons aren't a team I'm trying to force exposure to. We can say it's because of the spread or it's because of the low game total, but it's also a tough matchup. So a lot of things just kind of going against them tonight. Now, with that being said, I do love the Raptors tonight. I'm still thinking about if I want to try and force a little bit of exposure to the Pistons to try to help it make sense in my head for why I'm playing so many Raptors. But I think that might be me just getting a little bit too cute. We've been on this Jakob Poeltl train for so long, and he's still only 7,200 in salary, and he's been crushing every slate. I mean, I don't know what else to say here. He's still 7,200. He's still in a solid spot, solid matchup. He'll probably still be too low owned. I don't really care. Jakob Poeltl, I'll once again be over the field on him. Pascal Siakam, I'll once again be over the field on him. We actually saw both of them have strong performances last time out. At the same time, I'm not really expecting that to happen again, but we'll see. Chris, what's up? Said, per another site I use that has ownership, Porzingis at 38.6% ownership. Yeah. So if he does end up being that chalky, which makes complete sense, I'll probably be around like 40, 50% exposure, if not him being a core play. I'll have a crap ton of Porzingis. The ownership on him and Anthony Davis will probably both be pretty high tonight, and I'm going to be high on both of them still. I don't like high ownership. You all know I try to zig when other people zag, or maybe the other way you're supposed to say that. But in certain situations, I just don't care. And Porzingis is one of those spots for me tonight. I'm hoping other people overthink it, so I don't have to. But yeah, Pascal Siakam should be pretty low owned. Fred VanVleet, Jakob Poeltl, all three of them should be. They won't be low owned if Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent, and Precious Achiuwa end up being out. They're all questionable right now, so it's a spot we're gonna have to keep an eye out for. I kind of want Scotty Barnes and Gary Trent and Precious Achiuwa to play just so people don't force exposure to these guys, but I can't control that. If they end up being out, we do see Fred VanVleet get a nice boost in usage, 7.2% increase in usage. So he becomes much more viable on this slate to everyone else, whereas I'm already high on all three of them. So not too much will change for me personally. It's just I'm going to have to go even higher on them than I already was. Love the Raptors. For the Rockets, not a fan. Jayshawn Tate's out. Frank Kaminsky's questionable. Ty Washington's out. You can always make a case for Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green or Shungen. Jabari Smith has even been solid here recently too. I don't like the matchup. I don't know what their ownership is yet, but I would expect it to be relatively low on this slate. Yeah, I just don't like this matchup for them. I think they're all priced appropriately. I'm not a fan. For the Memphis Grizzlies. So this is a little bit of an interesting spot. So I know I need to look back. I think we're all expecting Morant to still be on some sort of minutes limit here. He played 23 minutes in the last game. Probably won't play a ton. But I just need to look back at the last note on what the coach said, because if he said he'll be on a minutes limit for just that one game, then there's that. Also, I don't think he's supposed to start today either. So for me, John Morant, if he starts, instant leverage play. Even if he doesn't start, I still have some interest in him. This still feels like a get right spot, but it's a large slate, probably getting too cute. I'm considering, like, assuming he's relatively low owned, I'm thinking about like a 5% min on him still, just to have a little bit of exposure to that upside we know he brings to the table. But more likely than not, I'll probably end up passing. Jaren Jackson Jr., we've seen him be fantastic in this exact spot. He's a little pricey these days at 8,200. But with that being said, fantastic matchup against the Rockets here. If John Morant doesn't start, those are kind of like the pivots I'm going to make. If John Morant, by some miracle, starts, leverage play. If he doesn't start, I'm going to force some exposure to Jaren Jackson Jr. Not committing to the leverage play on JJJ, but I do want to make sure I have some exposure to him in that spot. Desmond Bane, I know a lot of people played him last time out, but I wasn't super high on him. Still, he projects well. I'll probably let the Domination Station control what I do with him. Whew, we have a lot more games to get to. As Darius mentioned, the Hornets have been ridiculous, and we might have a ton of value from this game tonight. Right now, Terry Rozier is listed as TBD. Kelly Oubre is listed as TBD. Dennis Smith Jr. is listed as TBD. All guys who see a decent amount of run in these kind of positions. So for me, if Terry Rozier ends up not playing, then we can expect Dennis Smith Jr. to see a decent amount of run. If Terry Rozier and Dennis Smith Jr. don't play, then we'll see guys like Theo Maladin, James Bouknight get some exposure. It's gonna be some gross names, but they should see a decent amount of run tonight. Personally, I kind of like James Bouknight. I've kind of been a little bit of a fan of his ever since he got drafted. So little biased, but I like the spot. And then Nick Richards is a fine value play. We know we can play bigs against this Mavericks team. The only concern I always have is that they play at a little bit of a slower pace. So Nick Richards, PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, we're playing Hornets tonight, and it's just going to be one of those things. Even like Spy, we're going to have a little bit of exposure to too. So, just know you're going to have some gross names in your lines tonight, and some of them could potentially burn you if they're not in the starting lineup. Like, I'm trusting the starters. My strategy for the Hornets tonight is trust the starters, and then unless there's like a bench player who we've seen have like ceiling performances, just kind of mitigate my risk there. I want to have some exposure to them because they're going to be so cheap and they should see so much run, but I want to be careful because we don't really know how some of these guys are going to play. Willie said Charlotte is tanking. I loss of Oubre leaving after the first quarter. Yeah, I mean, they've been tanking all year, but like Jordan's trying to sell the team. Like, no one was playing last night. Who the heck knows what they're doing these days? As a Hornets fan, it's a tough world to live in. But at least we have the Panthers, right? At least we have the Panthers. All right, moving on. So for the Mavericks, we have Kyrie Irving listed as questionable. Tim Hardaway Jr. is also listed as questionable. If Irving's out, then that's a big boost for Doncic. Fantastic matchup against a really bad Hornets team. We've been playing bigs against the Hornets all year. I don't really want that to include Christian Wood, but it is a fantastic matchup for him. I'm only going to have Christian Wood exposure if Kyrie Irving doesn't play. If Kyrie Irving plays, I think that usage that Christian Wood has does decrease. And so I'm not really trying to force exposure there. So pretty much Irving plays. If Irving plays, I don't really see this game staying close. So I'm not trying to force exposure to the Mavs. If Irving's out, I'm forcing exposure to Doncic and Wood. Pretty much my strategy as of right now. If Tim Hardaway misses, I'm going to need to do a run and kind of see if there's anyone who benefits that I'm willing to take a shot on, but don't really love the Mavs tonight. Such a wide spread there. It's wild. The Bucks are actually interesting now that they've started to come back down to a more reasonable price. We have a little bit of a revenge narrative here with Joe Ingles, which is always fun to see. The big thing here is Chris Middleton being out. The guys who see the nice increase in usage with Chris Middleton out are Joe Ingles, Pat Connaughton, and Drew Holiday. I think you guys know, you give me a chance to take a shot on a good narrative, I am willing to go for it. As if Joe Ingles is relatively low owned, I'm willing to take a shot on him as a leverage play tonight because he has the highest increase in usage and because it's a revenge narrative. But if he already has decent ownership because people are chasing that narrative, then I'm just going to avoid it. I think you can always make a case for Drew Holiday in this spot. Again, the guard position is looking pretty stacked tonight, especially with some of the value we have on deck. So I'm a little iffy on some of that, but he's definitely on my list of viable point guards tonight. I just need to, rank him in comparison to everyone else once we get more of the news. So I like Drew tonight, but it's a tough one. Giannis, not my favorite stud on the slate. He will be low owned in compared to some of the other guys. So I think you can make an ownership argument, but outside of that, not a huge fan. Grayson Allen looks like he's projecting pretty well. I wouldn't X him out, but I would probably have like a 40% exposure maximum on him or whatever is double his ownership or projected ownership at that time. All right. For the Jazz, we have a lot of news for these guys tonight, man. Lauri Markkanen's out. Jordan Clarkson's out. Rudy Gay is out. These guys have been, we've been in this situation before. This isn't anything new. I know everyone's been getting burnt by THT for a while. He's been getting into some foul trouble. The Bucks aren't typically a team that I like to pick on very often, but if THT is going to be super low owned, I would like to put a 10% minimum on him, but I need to wait and see where that ownership falls, just because I think people are tired of being hurt by him. He still has upside here when there's no Clarkson, Sexton, or Markkanen. But with that being said, there's a lot of guys who see a nice boost here. Walker Kessler, as long as he's low owned, he's someone that I like a lot on this slate. I think a lot of people do, so I doubt he'll be super sneaky, but I do want exposure to him. Kelly O, we should get exposure to naturally. He's in a nice spot here too because of his price tag and upside with Markkanen out. We've seen that a few times already. Chris Dunn has benefited when THT gets into foul trouble, so he's seen a little bit more run there. Definitely viable if you're hoping for that to happen again. Agbaji has been in solid form. He's now priced more efficiently, so he's not the same value play he was previously. And then Simone Fontecchio is also popping as a solid value on this slate. I want to see what happens with the Hornets first before I kind of overcommit to one situation here, because I think we'll have quite a few value options. But I'm interested in seeing what ownership looks like on these guys tonight, because I'm curious to see if people prefer the Hornets value versus some of these other games. But I do plan on having some Jazz exposure if it's like a pivot off of the Hornets. All right, next up we have the Sixers. For the Sixers, we have big names questionables, we have Joel Embiid listed as questionable, James Harden listed as questionable. Joel Embiid did say he's going to play, but who the heck knows what that means. If Joel Embiid really is 3% owned against the Warriors, who we've been playing bigs against this year, totally fine putting like a 6% min on him if I'm able to after all the Porzingis and Davis exposure I have. As long as I'm able to make that work, I'm totally here for it. I like the matchup. I like the spot. James Harden being questionable, we already know like that's a boost to our guys like Maxey, Melton, Harris, even Milton a little bit. So all would just be more viable, but spread's not that far apart. I'm open to taking some low-owned shots on these guys, but I think once it's really only if Harden's out that I'll be excited about these plays, and I think everyone else would be too. So they're also not super cheap anymore, so it's not like we're getting an extreme value on these guys either. But I do like just kind of forcing some exposure to these guys. Like if it happens on the pre-lock show, we find out James Harden's late. I'll probably just like put a 5% min on Maxey, Harris, Melton, and like at least like a 10% min on Joel Embiid just to make sure that I have some exposure to like a really nice situation tonight. Warriors, opposite side of the coin. We've been playing a lot of Steph Curry, but I think I'm kind of getting off the train tonight. I don't like picking on this Sixers team. 12% ownership feels a little bit too high for me on a slate this size when I like other studs a bit more. Prefer playing a low-owned Curry, but if he shows up in my lines naturally, not a situation I'm going to try and avoid. The Warriors are pretty much healthy at this point, outside of like Wiggins, who's been out for a while. They do all project decently well, and they also all have like decent ownership. So maybe I'm missing something here. So not a situation I'm going to like purposefully avoid, but not super excited about it just because of the matchup. Interesting. The Suns, I do like. I like this game a decent bit, to be honest with you guys. The Suns, DeAndre Ayton and Kevin Durant are still out. Devin Booker at 21% ownership. How are all these guys super chalky tonight? Like, this is wild. Something's going to have to change here because everyone can't be popular. And we saw that the other night, actually, when everyone had like Jimmy Butler projected for like 30% ownership, and then he was actually like 9% owned. Usually, a lot of these guys are in beneficial matchups, but it doesn't always mean that they'll be as popular as everyone thinks they will be. So Devin Booker's one of those guys that I do want to be at least around field weight exposure to. 20% feels about right for me on this slate. Sim Model likes him a lot. I like him a lot. Fantastic matchup against the Kings. Willing to go right back to him here. We did see Bismack Biyombo have a solid performance last time out. I don't really try and chase these Suns bigs. It's going to be a different guy pretty much every time. Sometimes it'll be Landale. Sometimes it will be Biyombo. Not here to chase it, but you can. I get it, so I'm not going to tell anyone not to do it. I'm just not going to do it. So yeah, I like Devin Booker here. He's really the only Sun player that I'm really excited about. Chris Paul, I'm fine having exposure to, but I never force Chris Paul exposure. For the Kings, Kevin Huerter is questionable still, but he did practice yesterday. So I think most of us are expecting him to play. And with that being the case, I'm not super excited about these guys. Let's see what the sim model thinks about Sabonis and Fox. Not a fan of Sabonis. Not the biggest fan of Fox either. And I agree. I don't like this matchup against the Suns. They already have too much ownership, in my opinion. So I'm not really on board. That game does have the highest game total on the slate, though. So whenever that's the case, I always think it makes a little bit of sense to force some exposure if you want to. I'm forcing exposure to Booker, so that's how I feel comfortable. But if you do want to take your shots on the Kings, it's not a bad play by any means. For the Bulls, let's see. I know we have DeMar DeRozan listed as questionable. That's pretty big. Alex Caruso is also listed as questionable. We've seen Levine, Vucevic, White, and of course the other starters see an increasing usage as well if DeMar DeRozan actually ends up being out. You guys know I always loved Nikola Vucevic. The sim model typically loves him as well. 8,500 Vucevic. Yep, not a surprise. Still a fan. As long as he stays around that 10% range, he's a pretty easy leverage play for me today, which means I'll be putting like a 20% min on him. Zach LaVine, I'm only going to force exposure to if DeMar DeRozan's actually ruled out. Unfortunately, we might not get that news in time. So could be a little bit of a tough situation, unfortunately. Then Alex Caruso is looking like he's going to be pretty chalky, which I get at 3,300. It makes sense, but I think we might have some better value from the Hornets game. For the Trailblazers, we have Damian Lillard listed as probable. Anthony Simons is out. Jeremy Grant is out. Nurkic is questionable. Nasir Little is questionable. A lot of questionable tags here. This is still, once again, a fantastic spot for Damian Lillard. He's looking really popular. I'm not going to force exposure to him once again. I just don't love the matchup, and I don't like the ownership. If I get some exposure naturally because of the domination station, totally fine with it, but not a guy I'm going to force. Nurkic, questionable. Hard to really make too many decisions there, but Vucevic isn't someone I'm afraid of. Shaden Sharp, we were on last time around. I like Sharp if Little ends up being out. That really did come through last time around. Wild. All right, last game. Killer Cam said, so Jazz and Hornets are likely your main targets? Exactly. Yeah, I'm playing a lot of Jazz and Hornets and then focusing on leverage plays after that. That's usually my style of play. I usually like to try and find like the value that makes sense for me, usually pretty chalky value. Usually try to take shots from like the Hornets and or Jazz that are a little bit too low owned in my opinion. And so I'll take shots in those games on those kind of guys, and then I'll utilize like my leverage plays like typically low-owned studs or low-owned players in general that I'll go over the field on. Tonight's a little bit different because I'm going to be heavy on Anthony Davis and Porzingis, but we'll mix in leverage plays along with them. All right. The Thunder are another interesting team. SGA is listed as TBD. If he doesn't play, then we see a boost to Giddey. We see a boost to Jalen Williams. We see a boost to Lou Dort. Isaiah Joe even becomes a little bit more viable in a pretty solid matchup against the Lakers. So if we get that SGA news in time, this is another team that's more viable. Of course, we've been burned by the Thunder so many times. I think it's a pretty high likelihood that most people are just going to write it off, but I'll still force exposure to Giddey, Williams, and Lou Dort at least if we do get that news. Isaiah Joe, I want to play again just because everyone hates him so much, but I don't think we'll need to. I think we'll have better value. And then for the Lakers, Austin Reeves, I've seen a lot about him lately. I saw like a YouTube video about him. It's weird. But for the most part, I plan on just forcing exposure to Anthony Davis. He is really chalky already on this slate. Fantastic matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I'll probably have as long as I get close to field weight or at least slightly above that, I'm comfortable. But ideally, I'll be like in that 40-50% range at least. So large slate, guys, a lot of questionable tags, a lot of different possibilities. So definitely do tune into the pre-lock show. We'll know what we're doing by then. But as usual, appreciate you guys for sticking around with me. Appreciate the likes and support. Hope you guys have a great day. If I don't see you on the pre-lock show, if I don't see y'all then, I'll see you on Monday. Have a good one, guys. Peace out.